question. What's the difference between those first two?
Yeah, I'll go over those.
Welcome everyone to the July 8th meeting of the Telecom Advisory Committee.
Homeowners rentals.
I see we have some new members today. We should probably go around the table and make introductions again. I'll start. My name is Paul St. Pierre, I'm the acting chair of the committee. And also I represent the Economic Development Commission on this board.
I'm Dan Gilbert. I live in Easthampton and I have a small business here.
Kevin Mulligan, temporary clerk.
Tom Peake, I'm the council's appointee to the committee.
I'm Tom Mulsberry. I was recently appointed to the Board of Public Works, and it's on our agenda for this Wednesday to pick a replacement, and I've asked to be that appointment, so I'll come here just to not miss a meeting, get up to speed.
Rochelle Hawkins, I'm a resident of Easthampton. I'm a lifelong techno nerd, programming, and tech support and various other things. And as of Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, I'm told I will be a member of this committee. So.
Well, you're a member now.
I am a member.
You've got a temporary appointment, and then
okay.
the council will go through the whole process of confirming that appointment, but you are a voting member as of today.
Excellent.
I'm Stan Diamond. I'm a retired resident of Easthampton, and I represent myself and Easthampton Media.
Jason Miranda. I'm a semi-retired resident, probably.
Harry Schulman, I represent the planning board.
All right, awesome. Thanks. So, what am I gonna say? I have a thought here. Let's go. So let's move on. Approval of minutes. There being a chance to review those.
Well, a couple people probably haven't, but I have.
There you
I
go.
think I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. No one's here for public speak. I do have a quick follow-up for everybody about regarding the Matrix 1 visit we had last week, or last meeting. I reached out to Chris after the meeting and gave him some of the feedback that we talked about, specifically with the pricing and the comparative with Charter, them being more expensive or less advertised speed. I'll pass around what he sent back, but basically he agreed that the pricing was a bit out of whack. He really stressed that the packages that they've done in the past have been in communities that really only had DSL or satellite connections, and this would be a much more competitive, much larger type of market than that. So he suggested they'd be able to do like a 100-100 upload-download speed, you know, at a competitive rate with Charter to at least match them. He also said that they would do, or they'd be willing to discuss a revenue share with the municipality based on different subscription rates. So once we hit different quotas, we would have, you know, a revenue share that we can use to lower costs further and expand the, you know, the availability, or rather the attractiveness of it at least. And also he had said that they would be totally willing to share the burden of installation with municipal workers. That if we wanted to hire a team, that they would train them, show them how to install the cabling, probably at less cost than they're able to do it. And that would lower their cost of installation and allow us to even bring the cost further down to the subscribers. But, yeah, if anybody's interested in what Chris had to say. There's a question I think is there.
And I'll totally read this now, but would you mind just sending this out to the committee and CCing the mayor on it?
Sure.
I just think that, you know, this is the sort of development that you might find interesting, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, I like because when he was initially talking about this, he was saying he was gonna need like an 11% take rate.
Yeah.
And if we can't, I mean, like Westfield's talking 30-40% take rate in the communities they've expanded into. And given
I
that,
believe they said that they had no less than 30 in any district, but I'm not sure.
right,
But
so.
some they said they surpassed it substantially.
So we're talking about potentially triple. They're saying, you know, at this price, you know, at whatever they're saying, $95 a month, we need 11% to adopt it. Well, that's an awfully profitable proposition if we're talking about something that potentially,
30+%.
yeah, it would be interesting. But then again, at $95 a month for officially less speed. I mean, I get what he was saying about like I get what he was saying that like, you know, what the advertised, what the actual things are different, but like it would be, yeah. So cool. I think we're on the same page.
I think that Matrix might have a really interesting offer. You know, in fact, they're willing to put up a lot of upfront money to build it out. And if they're willing to be flexible on the pricing structures, and if we have set tiers of adoption rates and how that will impact the price, then, you know, I feel like that's a pretty attractive idea. You know, it might be a little more money for the initial adopters, you know, but once we get up to the, you know, whatever decided upon adoption rates, it brings it down. So it's an interesting idea. It's an interesting model.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, I also heard through the grapevine that Westfield is negotiating with Southampton to do them as well.
Really? You know, I'd spoken to a Southampton selectman at the St. Patrick's Day parade. The Easthampton and Southampton marched together
No,
for
I
that.
understand.
And we spent like basically the entire march just talking about this. And he was really interested in that, but they moved fast. So
Just wanted to
Yeah.
put that on the table.
it might not hurt for us to touch back with them at some point, to see how they're, you know, what's gone on in Westfield's world in the last, what has it been, like 8-9 months since we talked to them?
It's been that long?
It was like November.
Yeah, it was.
So,
Right.
If there's anything you want me to look into, the town moderator is a good friend of mine.
oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, I'd just love to know what's going on in their world right now, especially because, you know, when we're talking, Southampton is a pretty direct, like, business. Like, if we're trying to attract a business and they're trying to attract a business, you know, and they have Westfield's internet and we don't, you know. That actually has, that's getting close enough to Easthampton's borders where it kind of matters, so.
And we support them in terms of
Yeah,
get
it's
table
taking
access.
yeah. Okay, well, let's look into that and maybe chat about it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any thoughts about the Matrix 1 follow-up?
The only thing that's, I mean, I watched the video, I watched his presentation, and I was completely on board until we got to the price. And I agree that it was good that they saw, you know, your response. The other thing that sort of surprised me, and I completely understood that you wanted buy-in from the homeowner, but the $400 install is a major hurdle. I understand they don't want to have people just sign up and then cancel because they've invested the drop and the equipment, but I think that's also something that would need to be addressed with.
Yeah.
I understand they want some buy-in from the person since they're putting a drop, they're putting the equipment in, but that seemed out of line with what other providers have shown you,
Yeah.
like Greenfield and Westfield.
Yeah, they're doing it for
Yeah,
free.
Westfield does it completely for free. And what did they think? Their costs were like $700, I think, per drop.
Right, and they were just rolling that into the
$700.
into
They
the
were just eating it, yeah.
Right.
That might be a good question for Chris, if there's room on that to negotiate.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, all of those details would be, something that they would be things that ultimately the mayor would negotiate. But, we can be helpful in this capacity of just trying to see what the universe of options that are actually available are. But yeah, I think that is pretty cool.
Yeah, but, I mean, part of the discrepancy in the price between Greenfield and what these guys want is that in Greenfield, there's nothing going from the pole to the house.
But in Westfield, there is.
Yeah.
And they're just eating that.
That's their cost of doing business.
Yeah.
It seems like we could hurt ourselves, with the initial price offering and then with the price of the equipment. We want to get out the gate and garner goodwill and let word of mouth take over.
Yeah.
I don't see how either one of those is going to help us.
No, I agree.
If we can make that 0, it'll make rollout a lot better.
Yeah.
I just think that if they want to see, it sounds like they've primarily been doing this for either universities and large corporate facilities or for hill towns. And growing up in the hill towns, there's not a lot of options out there, so you can and also setting up something like this when everyone has a large pasture in between each house.
Right.
It is, I appreciate that the cost of doing these things is very expensive, and so you have to be realistic about what you offer and how you set it up. That being said, we are not a quaint little hill town. We're a dense, community, and if they I think that we're sort of just endlessly retreading this point and we're all on the same page, but I just do think they need to recognize that if they want to get involved in a community like this, they need to get involved in a way that's going to be price competitive and speed competitive with the people who have already hooked up your house, right? Because if they say, $400 is something that I read, there's plenty of thoroughly middle-class families that might not just have $400 to burn any given month that they can just whatever, I'll do. So they're just gonna stick with what they have unless there's a really substantial cost savings, which we're not looking. Even here they're talking about matching up.
A $400 fee right up front is a real reason to stick with what you got right now.
Yeah, I do think you did say they've done it with half up front and then half financed over a year, but still, it's a
I think
it's a hard sell.
I would stick with charter until something really broke with them for me to pay $400. I could justify it as a business, work from home business.
The word will
but
also get out that the price might come down, at which point people are going to wait.
Yeah.
This is
Well,
what
and
people
charter's
do.
going to have their price too.
charter will.
And they'll drop their price substantially the second they hear about this. Yeah,
And we also don't have the last mile grants that the hill towns have.
that's true. So, but from the looks of what,
Yeah.
I don't know how much good that's doing or where that's ending up. But yeah, okay. That's cool. We'll keep that conversation going like this, and we'll see where it goes. There might be other companies who would want to talk about doing the same thing too. So this is good to, just like with Westfield, it's all well and good to have these conversations to get an idea of who the players are and what they might want. But at the end of the day, it would have to be a request for proposals, and someone who has never come here to talk to us might come in and blow us away with a completely different offer. So.
And the other thing to remember also is that Chris was talking from the perspective of being a profit-making company.
Yeah.
Westfield is non-profit.
Right. Yeah. I guess the one thing I would say there is that, given that we are not, so Westfield also has that MLP that has a reserve, and that's one area where we don't. We are actually perilously close to our debt limit as a city, just as a result of the bonding that we just did. So we technically are able to exceed it for some reasons, but the credit rating agencies don't like that. So we could probably bond for this and be $5 under our debt limit right now, which would mean and I'm exaggerating there, but you get the sense of where we are. If we we don't have just a bunch of cash lying around, or we do, but it's for specific stuff. Sure. And if we ended up going out for a project like this, and we end up bonding for it, then the private entity that lends us that money, they're going to want a profit too. So one way or another, unless we find 10 million under a mattress, someone's going to make a profit off of us doing this thing. The question is whether they get a profit off financing it or whether they get a profit off of building it and running it for a few years. But someone, you know, someone's, or we could do a debt exclusion, but I don't think that anyone would. I don't see that politically passing in the next 20 years. So yeah. But I digress. Anyway.
All right. So, any more comments on Matrix 1 proposal? All right. Well, so I guess I'm going to turn it over to you, Jason, for the discussion of the public survey response.
Sure. So I sent out this afternoon, sorry it didn't come earlier, but the raw data with the with any personal identifying information stripped out, which you might have seen, and then this PDF of just sort of Microsoft Forms way of tallying this data. It shows you question by question what's going on. So we can go through that. I can sort of describe, especially for the new members who weren't here for the whole process of setting it up, what the survey addressed. Basically, the first question, so the survey used some just simple branching logic. So it said, you know, the first question is, are you a resident or a business owner? And then it tried to break it out. So if you look at that very first question, the first three are, I'm a resident of Easthampton, I own my home, I'm a resident of Easthampton, I rent, or I live in Easthampton but do not rent or own, which is kind of that. We didn't have many respondents, we only had 16 people, and that's sort of like, do you live at home with your parents, or that's what I was trying to capture there. Then we tried to, since this was going to be shared widely, actually the city's IT director suggested we have a question in there about, I am not a resident of Easthampton, but I'm thinking about maybe moving there someday. A way of just sort of capturing some of that. Again, not a huge 4 people out of 618 total. And then I own a business located in Easthampton, or I own a business outside of Easthampton, but I'm thinking of moving to Easthampton, so I've gotten none of those. So overwhelmingly, the respondents were homeowners, residents of Easthampton. We shared this on the municipal website, and we shared it on Facebook several times, and lots of members shared it out on their personal pages. We also had like these small tickets that we put around town, and I don't know, would have been interesting to somehow capture the the rate of response based on that, but there was no way. So I think, I mean, we can go question by question, but it might just be more important to talk about general themes. I don't know if anybody wants to saw anything in the data that jumped out at them, but
I haven't seen the data yet.
Okay.
But, since your last meeting, I think you had about 250 responses.
Yes.
And it was predominantly like cord cutters, high-tech people.
Yes.
You've had a good influx in the past month. Did you see any variation in the responses? Were we starting to get more average citizens, or is it still?
I mean, it's averaged in terms, it's an average citizen in terms of how many people I think are on Facebook.
Right.
I think we put out the word at the senior center, we put out the word locally with those little cards, but otherwise it's very difficult to get the word out other than word of mouth. And I think a sample rate of 618 in a town of 16,000 is pretty decent.
Right.
And it's,
Yeah. I mean, we can
I
probably safely assume there's some sampling bias
yes.
in terms of
But
how
also
it's
probably
delivered.
our potential customers are also that same.
This is probably a pretty good universe
Yeah.
of the people who would be likely adopters.
Right.
Yes.
But just as you pointed out, when you go to a public meeting and then somebody else listening says, this doesn't represent me.
Right.
You know.
We should be, careful to acknowledge that. I mean, this is true for literally any survey that you send out on anything. People who care about it are going to respond. People who don't care. I get surveys all the time. What do you think about this? If I don't care, but think.
I'm not taking a survey.
We can, if we do this again, or if we needed more data, or if we said we want to focus on a certain demographic, I think it would be interesting to do something specifically with the Council on Aging and the Senior Center, because I don't think they're represented enough in these. I mean, it would be hard to tell
Yeah.
how they're, but I think, since they'll be the ones who would be probably generating the most support calls, and needing the most help setting that up and doing any cord cutting or anything like that, it would be interesting to get their perspective. Also on price too, and you know what they're using the internet for now at home and how many of them actually have it. I mean, you may find that lots of them actually don't have it, or have it and don't really use it in favor of cable television. I don't know. But I think if we were to go do a more targeted survey or a more targeted feedback, it would be really interesting to do a session at the Council on Aging.
I think it's really interesting that a third of respondents have smartphone as primary access
right?
for internet, which makes me realize like,
It's the same as tablets, or notebooks, computers. Like,
Yep,
it came
yep.
in, it's the same share.
so that's gonna be, you know, not necessarily, I mean, some of those people, a lot of those people are using a router at home. But some of those people would probably consider going to entirely mobile
5G,
service.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
or LTE, you know,
Right.
which is,
I mean, I
LTE,
think that
LTE
comes-
speeds are very comparable to what Charter gives. The only difference is that you're paying per gig.
Yeah, except I'm noticing that the share of 1 to 2 internet-capable devices is very low.
Yeah.
So that means that there are people who are say, yeah, I primarily use my phone,
Right.
but,
I still have a router, yeah.
well, I still have something else.
And the only way
Yeah.
people are probably affording that is because when they're at home, all their calls are through Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or all their,
I bring that up more, not so much for the current, but for the future.
right.
Is I can see, I mean, I've myself thought about ditching a cable and just having having a hotspot or something.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense now, but
It'll
it
be
might in the
interesting.
future make a
It
lot of
depends
sense.
on what the pricing is on 5G, right?
Right.
Like if they suddenly offer those unlimited plans that everybody, whoever's lucky enough to have them, who never canceled them, yeah.
We hold on to death grips.
But that, yeah, I can't, it will be interesting once we see the pricing model for 5G. I don't know if it's even out there yet. Has anybody seen it?
Well, but even
Someone's
before,
off.
even before 5G, I mean, Charter is now offering cellular service as part of the package.
Yep.
There's a new company I saw recently called Hello, which is offering unlimited data and cellular service for like $25 a month.
Right.
But I think even when you see that smartphone, but then you go to a question like number 4, where it's what activities do you use the internet for at home? I was surprised that video conferencing came in as big
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
as it did, which really bolsters
Oh, yeah.
having a very broadband connection.
And
Yeah.
streaming.
And streaming, yeah,
a
not
lot of
many people are streaming on their phone.
People who are working from home will be doing video conferencing.
My wife does that almost
Yeah.
exclusively now,
Yeah.
that's-
Yeah.
And also people with
Partner
family
with that.
members who are farther away.
Mhm.
You know, there's a lot of that's becoming a bigger thing. Like
And
Skype
that,
with the grandkids.
Right,
Yep,
exactly.
yep, yep.
And that, I mean, that also, if you're talking about economic development and you're trying to advertise your town, what we talked about earlier on in some of those meetings was, you can, instead of attracting a company, you can attract 50 telecommuters to your town who are bringing in probably the same revenue.
Yeah.
Their tax revenue, but they're each working for a company from California or Boston or
And
wherever.
it's the company in California that's paying for it. It's not our
Yeah.
tax revenue, it's not,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm surprised how many people who say they work from home. Or
Yeah.
It's becoming a more common thing.
yeah, although I suspect some of these aren't full-time working from home, they're like, they take a day,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I was surprised about too, if you go into question, I think it starts around question 8 is where the cord cutting. I mean, there's sincere, you're talking about maybe survey bias or sampling bias, but
It's a little over
I mean,
half
it's
that.
huge. Or it's even, yes, I've seriously considered it, it's also
Yeah.
big, and the people that are saying no are tiny.
I mean, like there's definitely some sampling bias here, but it's also a trend. I mean, if you look at Easthampton Media's revenue numbers, there's a clear trend of less and less people every
Absolutely.
year having a cable package, and so it's a real thing. I mean, it's probably exaggerated here, but it's a real trend.
But also what helps it too is that the people, when you ask them if the people that haven't cut the cord, how difficult do they think it'll be to do that, they actually don't think it's that important, or that technically difficult.
Yeah.
I mean,
Somewhat or not difficult at all.
right, so they may experience some hiccups in the first month of getting it set up, but this is not necessarily something that is like it was 10 years ago. Or like, I don't even know like what a Roku is, or it's,
That's just education.
yeah, or just awareness.
Right.
So I think it's an easy, if you're trying to hit that 30 to 40% take rate, it's a pretty easy sell to those people. There are still people that won't do it because they want cable, but
Right.
I was surprised. That was my first experience with cable over vacation. We were staying at a house that had it, and it was there was nothing. It was like such a wasteland. And it's amazing how less, like when they went all digital, how less friendly of an experience it is to have to use the guide to go through and then wait that lag time to get the station to come up, and there's just nothing. There's just like this dead zones in the channels. I hadn't used cable in a long time, and it was just like, this is yuck.
It's interesting. Most of the businesses that responded, I mean,
Yeah, we didn't get a lot of business.
yeah, I don't even know how much it's worth discussing that stuff in too much detail. But it is interesting that out of the ones that responded, 13 were 1 to 5 employees, and my guess is that 10 of those 13 are probably, sole,
Right.
single person businesses.
What was interesting about the business stuff, question 14, when we asked them what tier of download speed, that the overwhelming majority said, I don't know. So it's not something that it's something that I think is impressive when you're trying to sell something, but it's not something that people remember. All they remember is, can I do the thing I want to do at the time I want to do it? And most businesses provide their own tech support. Oh yeah, so if you look at question 15, Tom, the determine, I am self-employed, I provide my own 10 of the,
Nailed it.
15. So, yeah, they're overwhelmingly. We did get a few. I saw Crisello, Vince Crisello responded to the survey. I think maybe some of the insurance agencies did, but I think, that would be, along with the seniors, another more targeted survey at businesses would probably be called for.
I agree.
Now, you've mentioned the seniors several times. I wanted to just let the group know, we're in the process of creating an organization called Easthampton Neighbors, which is based on the Neighbors to Neighbors national organization. It's up and running in Northampton, and basically what it is it's to support seniors and help them keep living in their homes by providing people to help them do things that they can't do by themselves for free. So by the time this gets off the ground, that should be a viable organization and set up and ready to be doing business, and we could provide from that organization some of the support for getting the seniors hooked up and running and trained, et cetera.
Sure.
Maybe offer some classes or like small mini classes at the.
Or even going to their homes.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of education there as being, I see a lot of education in terms of prior to rolling out, in terms of kind of advertising education, what this means. But once it's installed, their internet service is going to look very, very similar to whatever it is now.
But I think we're worried about seniors who may have cable TV, but don't use a
In
computer
terms of
at this
TV,
point.
in terms of television. I see.
We don't want to, that was one thing the Westfield stress was how much
Well, we're
outreach
targeting
and support they did for their aging population. And
Specifically for television?
specifically for television, around like, they were selling the devices at cost, like Roku and the
Oh,
Fire
okay.
Stick and things like that.
And they were having classes in the evening to show people
That
how to
makes
use a
sense.
Roku.
That makes
Being
sense.
out at the
I
library.
was just thinking the internet connection, you know, it's like, it's
Right.
gonna come into your
Yeah.
router, it could be the same router, and it's
Right.
like,
So my grandparents live in Westfield, and they switched to the Westfield fiber, system, and they were very confused by it.
Sure.
And went to one of the classes, and they got the Roku, and they learned how to use it. And they didn't totally love it, but they liked that it was local, and they were supporting the community, and they could live with it, and they figured it out, as they went. So they were fine with it.
And I think we're also going to have to separate seniors who have a local grandchild and seniors who don't have a local grandchild.
Yeah.
Or what do they call Thanksgiving now? You go and you do your parents' tech support.
Yeah. I've been meaning to ask you since December.
Yeah, so anyway. So yeah, I don't know that the business questions are all some of these routines.
I'm amazed there's 26 Verizon DSL customers.
I know.
I think it's kind
You're
of.
one of them, aren't you?
I got Verizon DSL.
Yeah.
I have no problem with it.
Yeah, it works.
Have the ability to
You know what's
get
wrong?
charged.
Do you know why
Oh, they don't reach every house in
cost
town?
of DSL per month?
Not much.
Not much.
No, it's like $60, $50, something like that.
That seems.
That's what,
I think that's what we're
That's
paying.
about what I paid. Rent get me 65 for charter.
yeah, I think mine did, $59.95 or something.
They're just gonna milk every dollar from that infrastructure. Just.
Gotta pay for that copper.
That's it.
One thing that I think is kind of interesting, service disruptions. There's definitely it's interesting to see the diversity. That's like question 22, the diversity in the responses, where there's a good chunk of people who actually haven't really had any major service problems, but then there's also people who are saying like over 100 are saying either multiple times a week or multiple times a month. So it's interesting to see that distribution. I wonder what.
We had asked the two questions to sort of get a better bead on what people were experiencing.
Right.
And I don't know that.
That's
I haven't looked at
also-
it closely enough
I'm
to see
gonna
if there's any.
suspect that people who are on close to the backbone are seeing high speeds and no disruptions, and people who are out in outlying areas are seeing a lot more disruptions.
It could also be busier neighborhoods too, where there's more people on a single
Our
switch.
busy users and maybe somebody's talking
Yeah.
in the back.
Okay, I'm gonna say we're out on Holyoke Street, and we have seen like maybe 2 disruptions since we've been here.
Yeah.
And we're seeing 138 up, so
Yeah.
it's,
I'm on-
yeah,
We're
yeah.
We're on Holyoke and we have close to 200, pretty steady, but we pay an extra $10 a month.
Down.
Down, but up slightly.
No, I'm.
Okay, I was like-
You
just blew my mind for a second.
I was like 21.
I was like, everyone here is less on a
Sorry.
good day.
We're like
Yeah.
150 and like 30 up is pretty standard.
Wow.
That's great.
So
I
how
get
far out?
nothing near.
We are at, right at the curve next to the Historic Society.
Okay,
Right.
so you're closer into town.
Yeah, right.
I'm
Yeah,
on
we're further
Main
out.
Street and like just up past Glendale, and our service was great for years, really bad when we first got here, and then it smoothed out for years, and then the last year has been very like up and down, spotty. We replaced the router and it's still been spotty, especially during the storms, which I don't know if there's any
That's-
correlation with that
Oh,
or
sure.
any but it's just I know if there's a big rainstorm, we're probably not gonna have.
It could be as simple as everyone's inside using the.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's true.
I'm gonna bet there's a damaged flip
With
connection
DSL, do you have
somewhere.
any issues
Yeah.
with thunderstorms affecting your service?
No. The only thing we had to replace the router, and we got charged like $60.
It's not bad.
So here's
And I
a.
got it in one day.
So the satisfaction rating out, one, no number 1 up through 5, our average was 2.94. I'd love to see what the actual,
Yeah.
but that's higher than I thought it would be.
It's a little higher than, yeah.
I thought maybe 2 and 2 1/4 to 2.5 maybe, but almost 3 is.
Yeah.
I will share, you know what I will pull out, which I didn't pull out for this, was there's one column, maybe it's in there, of just like anecdotal responses, like, do you have any other feedback for us? So I should pull those out and just share.
The other question that would be interesting on the how satisfied are you question is, how satisfied are you with your current service as far as technical details go? And separate out another one, how satisfied are you based on costs?
That's true.
I mean, the overwhelming takeaway for me is that people do want an alternative, but they want that alternative to be cheaper, or they want it to be cheaper
And
and they better.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at,
Cheaper and better.
if you look at
Cheaper, better, faster.
27,
Pick 2.
yeah, seriously. If you look at 27, the top two that tied are reliability and price.
Right.
And so that, I think, hits on a point that that Greenfield made, you know, because coming into this, I really felt, you know, and I still do to some extent, like the whole idea of this like gold standard is like a gig is what we're going for, and anything less is like don't even bother.
Right.
And what Greenfield said is, well, you know, we asked around and people were fine with the speed of their internet. They just didn't want it to tank,
Right.
which fiber just does, right? If you're not like, but then also the price is really important to them. And I think that when we're looking at all these different technical options, that's a really important thing to keep in mind. That people aren't necessarily, I mean, outside of certain very technical circles, people might not as much be looking for insanely fast internet as they are for affordable, reliable internet.
Right. And I think it sort of cuts against the idea that this is a biased sample, is that if you had technically aware people and you're saying, hey, we want to give you a gig internet, and they're saying, well, I'm not paying more than $35 for that, the people that were in the know would say, $75 for a gig is amazing. Like, I'll take that deal. And I think there's a subset of people in here who recognize and who actually said in the comments, you know, I recognize it may be more expensive and I'm willing to pay that for better service.
Right.
But by and large, people who are coming through Facebook are concerned about, they probably don't have those demands, those bandwidth demands that require a gig, and they just want something that is going to be $35 to $45 a month.
Right here.
And they want it to be, you know, they're gonna hit a ceiling at some point, right? Because if you look at how many devices, by and large, these people have, like, at some point, they're gonna, you know, somebody's gonna be upstairs watching something, downstairs, kid's gonna be doing something, they're gonna, you know, scream, but,
So I think something interesting on this one also that ties into that is this response for latency. I think the vast majority of people don't know what latency means.
Right.
You know?
Right, yeah.
But I actually think that is the, probably even more than reliability, the thing that people don't know the name for, that they judge their internet service on.
That would be what
Yeah.
they mean by reliability.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think reliability folds in downtime.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is dead, it doesn't work. But people I know who are even quite tech savvy people, I know someone who just moved to Leverett, and they're like, it's incredible service. You know, it's like browsing the internet is totally different, you get a page immediately. And I'm like, well, that's not bandwidth, that's latency.
Yeah.
That's you send the request out and it comes back, and like, you know, so I think that's an education thing, but I think that people rank more high, they rank it higher than bandwidth.
They think they're getting a service disruption when it's really a latency problem. It's like, why isn't Facebook loading? It's
Right.
like, well, there could
You
be.
just took the words, I remember the problem last week with bringing pictures up on Facebook.
Right.
And people
Right.
keep bringing and, you know, hey, you guys, what the hell is wrong with you? And we have no control over it.
Yeah, I think that was an AWS problem again, or?
Yeah.
I'm going to say rather than teaching them latency, you teach them quick. how quick is it?
Yeah.
How fast is it?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
and then you can label it latency.
No, I
Right.
totally.
Yeah.
I think we put that in there to test the waters of what, because we were
yes.
doing reliability and
Oh,
we had
yeah.
all these things, and it was like, why don't we throw latency in there to see how many people identify that as your, and that could actually show you your subset of tech savvy people in this survey.
Latency is also going to be real important to the video conferencers.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep. That's something that
And-
Melissa's been
and-
complaining about.
It's important
And-
to everybody.
yeah.
It's almost everything you do, except maybe a big file transfer.
Right.
Latency is going to be the thing you notice. And
You know, you look at number 24, it says, do you bundle your internet with any other service? And there's 284 people saying, no, I do not bundle.
Right.
Okay? Then you go over on number 29, would you consider switching to a service if you meant for going a discounted bundle package? So on one hand, they're saying they don't. And over here, with it's 270, but say, yes, I would. So I mean, you know what I mean?
yeah, that might account for.
So how can that be? 284 said they don't bundle, and over here, they said, would you give the bundle package up? 270.
I think it's more of a hypothetical than, because I think everybody saw this question. It was like, if you did have a bundle, would you?
Well, how would they know? They don't know how much money they're saving if they did bundle, you know?
Well, then they just answer yes. I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
I mean.
Right,
So
yeah.
that might be a little bit of
Yeah.
a tainted.
You should probably consider the idea that some of these people have already, that they already don't bundle. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, there's actually not an answer on here that's
Would
not
kick it out of
applicable.
the survey.
Right,
Yeah.
that's true.
So I'm guessing most of the not applicable, because I don't have a bundle package now, mostly answered yes. Yeah.
So,
Only 6 people said bundle pricing is more important.
Yeah.
Six people, yeah. So, it's pretty clear. Yeah.
That's hard to believe. I mean, you know, a lot of people bundle.
Yeah,
There's only
when the
six
price,
figures worth.
when the price goes up after a year, they dump it.
Yeah,
And they get
yeah.
very upset with Charter as it
Yeah.
keeps climbing,
That's-
so,
yeah.
yeah.
Do we want to talk more about the survey, or do we want to start talking about the public forum?
I think we probably have more conversation about this either off, like, I don't know when, but I think it merits more conversation, but I think everybody needs to digest it a bit more.
I think this is fantastic.
Yeah, it's useful information.
It's something I would never dream of because, you know, the survey the way it came along.
It's definitely people want an option, like people want an
Yeah.
alternative that's clear, and I think we do that anecdotally, but I think it's
Right.
definitely.
And that's quite a few people to think about. You gotta look at 500 people, right? 400, 500?
600.
618.
Yeah, that's quite a few.
We can also take from this, so we had that question about if we did offer this, would you want to be an early adopter? So we have their names and addresses, and we can start to map those and figure out where the density is, and then say, maybe this would be a good, if we went as far as a pilot, got to the point of doing a pilot, this would be the neighborhood to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will pull that data out and try to get it into some form that we can, I don't know if you know of any software options that'll take addresses or something and map.
Yeah, I can do it in
Points.
GIS or whatever. I mean, I have a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. I'll just get it's just gonna take some massaging of the data to get it into a form usable.
Yeah, I can totally do that. Just send that stuff my way.
Okay, so moving on to public forum. So first thing we have to do with this is nail down a date that works for everyone.
Yes.
I think the upstairs room is open pretty much any Monday that we would like to use it for. And Mondays work pretty well for all of us.
I thought in the last meeting, we were leaning towards a Wednesday or more middle of the week. Just,
Okay.
yeah, just to get more people to show up. Mondays are kind of tough. But if that's all that's available, it's all that's
Well,
available.
let's pull it up.
Wednesdays also, yeah.
There you go.
I think before we have to give ourselves enough time to get this data into some form that's presentable, shareable with the public. Give them a week or something to have access to it.
Yeah, so does that mean we're thinking probably August?
I mean, we're pretty far into July now, so, you know, we'd be talking 2 weeks here, really, to get ready for this meeting, and I think that's too short, you know, to get the word out.
Yeah. I don't disagree.
So Labor Day's on the 2nd of September, which is a Monday.
What about, August 21st?
I'm gonna be in Canada
Oh,
permanently.
oh.
For the whole day.
I'm trying to
The week before?
Yeah,
Is that Monday or the 21st?
yeah, there's, it doesn't look like there's anything upstairs, I mean, 'cause there's a bunch of well, the one thing is that is a,
Wednesday, so ours was the city council.
well, not that, but that is a, Board of Public Works meeting,
Which day?
the 14th,
Yeah.
August. Yeah, so that's probably not gonna work.
How are Tuesdays?
Well, our meeting's at 5.
That's true. How long do they usually go?
I mean, 5 minutes to an hour, like, it just depends on how.
But if we set something for like 6:15,
I can't see any reason it would be, I mean, I've watched the backlog and I don't think I've ever watched a video that was more than like a half hour,
Okay.
you know?
I've seen
Well,
some of those.
What do you
There's a
guys
couple
think
of-
about
couple of them
August
just in a couple minutes.
14th?
Works for me.
I'll definitely be
So
around.
Wednesday.
I might be in the Catskills.
Let's see. There's other than that, there's a finance subcommittee and zoning board of appeal and historical commission, but none of you guys are on any of that stuff, including myself. So, and that would give us, you know, we'd be meeting the previous Monday. So we'd have a chance to sort of finalize.
Dress rehearsal.
Yeah, just go over all that stuff one more time. Finalize. It also gives us a month to promote the meeting and ask the city to promote the meeting so that we can actually get a good attendance, because if you want to schedule a public hearing, it's nice to be like.
Do you think the mayor might invite the chair or somebody onto her weekly update segment?
Yeah,
At least to promote the meeting?
She's talked about doing that a bunch of times, so yeah, I think that should be fine.
Okay.
So, one thing I would want to throw out there, I did put August 5th there rather tentatively, but I also am going to be gone that week of the 5th. So I wanted to float it by you guys to see if we could do the meeting on the 12th or even the week before, if that works better for people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty flexible.
Flexible.
Yeah, me too. Seems like doing this meeting 2 days before the public forum would be great. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense
That'd
to
be
me.
really
Well, I mean, but if that's where we're gonna finalize what we're going to present and what we're going to hand out, then we're gonna be in a scramble to
Oh, yeah,
get all
that's a
that
little
pulled together. If it's just 2 days before
Mhm.
the public meeting.
Right, especially if we're printing stuff. I mean, although I don't know how much of a huge issue it'll be. I mean, ideally we'll have something pretty much finalized by then, and just don't print anything.
Were we
Yeah, we
talking
can
about
share
power-
slides back and
I was
forth.
gonna say, we were
Yes.
talking about a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah,
And probably a one-pager with some
yeah,
information.
yeah, because we don't have a budget,
Right.
so
What?
Yeah, we don't have, but I can't get reimbursed for my phone.
I'm afraid not. So I was, if we had something more like an agenda, maybe a one-page fact sheet about what we've been doing, and then we'll do a PowerPoint presentation, and we'll really just check in, go over some of these slides, things that we might slides that we think might be particularly interesting, and just sort of explain where we are and who we are and what we're doing, and then people get a chance to engage, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be fine to do it on the 12th.
Is there any reason to have an interim short meeting just to see a rough pull together so we're not stuck last minute with a big change? If you want to get like a rough set of slides together for
I mean, would it be okay for, I
like a
mean,
late July meeting?
do you think that maybe a couple of us, so that we're not a quorum, might want to collaborate on
Right, like a
putting
little
something
working
together, like a
committee.
little working group? So that, just so as long as the majority of us aren't seeing that, it's fine for, 3 people to sort of.
Who's putting together the
Well,
PowerPoint?
I'm pretty good at PowerPoint. I mean, I'm an economist, so I'm
Volunteer over here. Yeah.
You're intimately
Most of
familiar
my-
with the data at this
Yeah,
point.
Yeah.
and so I made
Not to nominate you, but
PowerPoint, making PowerPoints is made for more.
Does
things
anyone
than
else
I've
want to?
I'm happy to participate if the input is, I've made PowerPoints.
I'm
But,
perfectly
like,
comfortable with you 3 guys, putting this together and just running by us before the public meeting.
I would also suggest some of us going over to Easthampton Media and putting together either one or a series of PSA announcements and have it run on the cable channels, for the week before the meeting.
Yeah,
yeah, I think.
yeah, sure.
That's a great idea.
That's awesome. Will you just run point on that and just,
Well, I mean, just whoever wants to get up in front of the camera, just reach out to Easthampton Media and they'll bring you in and do the PSAs for you.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine doing one and maybe follow on to one.
I would like to, yeah.
So, yeah, let's, if you could just set that up, we'll
Sure.
figure it out.
But I mean, it can be done.
Yeah.
That's what
It's just a question of when you would want to do it.
Mhm.
So I put together, I know this isn't an infinite thing to do, but I wrote a kind of a draft of what kind of speech would be given at the public meeting, and I'm really hesitant to share this because it is really a rough draft, but
Gotta start
but I'm still
somewhere.
going to share it with you guys. I'd like to read through it and just get feedback from people.
Let's start somewhere.
Pretty quick. That's pretty cool. I like that.
All
So
right.
I left some spots.
No grammar corrections this time.
There are
That's
some
your
gra-
thing, so.
there is a grammatical error in there, one that really drives me nuts, but when he's speaking it out loud, it
Share like a
doesn't.
Google Doc of this, so we can comment on it.
Oh, yeah. So I did put some spaces here, discussion of survey, discussion of the different models that we might have. I didn't write those out, but I figured that would be the points, we would cover those.
Actually, just to raise a point, can we do that? Can we all work in a live
We
document?
did that. We did that with the letter to the
Is
letter
that
to the council, right?
deliberation?
Yeah, I think the only time.
I see what you're saying. You weren't saying it.
No,
The only time that we did that was the way that I
Like,
had,
that's the point of the small working
Yeah,
group, like
right.
you three
Right,
working
yeah.
together is not a.
when we had done that, what it was that I had brought something to the table, we had made a bunch of edits, but
And-
like on paper, and I had put that up for everyone to see if anyone disagrees with, like, thinks that this isn't what we voted on or whatever.
But
Then
it wasn't a working document.
No, we weren't like, hey, you should do this, you should do this, like.
So, open meeting laws haven't caught up with that model.
No, and specifically in the
Collaboration.
training I went to, they specifically were like, they have not caught up to modern collaborative work groups, of email or,
That's okay.
So like 3 or 4 of you could work on this.
Dip my feathered
Yeah.
hot.
Up to 4 people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
technically up to 4 of us.
Which is the problem with the DPW, like 2 of us can't go to a training together.
That's
Like,
why we're trying to amend our charter to add a couple
'cause 2
members.
people out of the 3 of us makes a quorum, so like, no 2 of us can have a conversation.
But 1 1/4 could.
Yeah, the planning board went to train up in Worcester, we had no problem with that.
I mean, you can be in the same room, but the second you start talking business, it's a
Like, oh,
problem.
this would be good
Yeah,
to apply.
we went to take classes, we weren't
Yeah.
talking together.
Yeah.
Sorry, to distract.
No, that's good. I didn't realize that
This
that
is
was.
great, but I don't care if that 10 to 12 million, that's gonna scare a lot of people. It really is.
I mean,
That's what it costs.
But might.
But you gotta explain to them what's gonna get paid. You know,
Well,
you gotta buy subscriptions and
But
stuff
we
like
could,
that.
you could talk about the bonding options at that point, and then it relieves, I think, some of the idea that this is a revenue generating project, which is different than schools are not revenue
You
generating.
really gotta get into a discussion about how it's gonna get paid, and always people
Right,
are gonna have
right.
I think I agree with you. I don't think it's necessary to bring that total cost up.
No, yeah.
So some of this language was poached a little bit from the memo that Tom had come up with, and a little bit was poached from another couple memos that we had written or had written in the past. So anyway, I just want to read through it here. Hello, and thank you all for coming to the Telecom Advisory Committee public meeting. Over the last 12 months, we've been studying what actions our city might take with regard to ensuring the fastest, most affordable, and fairest possible internet service. We've heard from many residents who feel the services available today are insufficient in meeting their current usage requirements and have expressed a high degree of dissatisfaction with national broadband providers. As such, we have strongly considered and will recommend Easthampton move forward with steps to establish a publicly owned internet utility utilizing fiber optic technology.
Do we want to talk about our recommendations yet?
you know, if I had seen this beforehand, I might have had a better time, like, actually getting helpful feedback. There's just a lot to digest here. But I mean, I'm happy to sit through it, but like, I'm not going to be able to have a lot of like super useful, other than like really broad strokes feedback, just because I haven't been able to read it over a couple times and digest it.
Fair enough. Yeah. I wasn't sure if we wanted to say that or not.
Well,
It was really,
I'm a little bit, I mean, in principle, I like this. The one thing is, like, we have made that recommendation, and so I think it's fine. But I might, just from a political standpoint, recommend focusing more on the benefits of fiber than the level of dissatisfaction.
Well, that's the next paragraph, is all benefits. Just in case you haven't gotten there yet.
I literally had this
Yeah.
showed up on my desk on my in front of me 5 minutes ago. But, you know, okay.
in all fairness, I typed this up last night.
Right.
And there's-
When we said we're gonna add it, I kind of agree with Tom, but I think that first paragraph can probably be shortened. That's, you know, we can put this on the internet and then everybody can take a shot at it. That's it.
I mean, the one thing I will say right now is I think that the first thing that we need to do whenever we communicate with the public is explain what our mandate is. Right? This is essentially a research group. You know, we can meet with all these other communities to find out what we're doing. We're not a negotiating body, and we're not a body that can bond either. What our charge is to, in fact, I think we're going to be a little late on that, which is something we should probably talk about at some point. Our charge is to do this research and deliver a report to the mayor and the city council explaining the market and the pros and cons and the costs and what we'd have to do to make this all happen. And that this survey is part of that study, and that's why we're looking for feedback from the public. I think that's an important thing before we just say, hey, we're the Telecom Advisory Committee, and look, people are not super happy. I think it's important that we lead with, here's who we are and why we
I
exist.
think that's the second most typical conversation I've had with people assuming, oh my God, you're moving forward with this? Like already? There was one resident I spoke with for a while at some event, and he was like, you guys might want to, are you going to hire people? He commented on a couple of things on the Facebook page. He's like, are you going to have a whole department that's going to run this? I think, you know, what do you might seem like you think you know what you're doing, but you may not know what you're doing. And it was like, oh, no, we're researching right now. Like we have we're not building anything currently. So yeah, I think that we can't repeat that often enough, I think, to people.
Right. We're conducting a study, and part of the study is what the people of Easthampton think of this idea.
So, Alright, so fiber as a medium is currently the fastest, most reliable, most secure way to provide an internet connection to a home or business. Fiber optic internet service would bring substantial improvements to the speed, reliability, latency, bandwidth, and general functionality of internet services to Easthampton, driving economic growth, allowing Easthampton residents and businesses to invest in new data-driven technologies and prepare our infrastructure for the massive data communication needs of the future. Is this even a needed paragraph?
Well, I think if we want to keep it in, I would couch it in a little bit of like what our research has found is that out of the alternative options, fiber is really attractive because of blah blah blah. But stating that it's rather than just dropping it as a fact, say, hey, we've looked at a bunch of different options and one of them is really attractive to us, and here's why.
I think it would be interesting in the vein of this stuff to, and it could be as short as a sentence or two, to talk about how, pretty much everyone needs some sort of access to the internet as like a basic utility. Mm-hmm. And putting it in a nonprofit role could, it both increases the access to it to people who need it and can reduce the cost of it because you don't have a for-profit company that is taking a chunk out of everybody. You know what I mean? Like the benefits here of doing it ourselves are that we can do it in a nonprofit way.
Yes.
Do you spend any time talking about net neutrality as just anybody up for that conversation?
Yeah, I think it's a cool.
It's important to me, but I don't know that
I'd
most
leave
people.
that to the public,
Yeah.
If people want to bring it up, then we can discuss it.
I think people are in support of it even if they don't entirely know what it is, which makes it probably at least politically not a bad thing to bring up.
But it might be something we would have control of by having it as an entity and not relying on a for-profit company. Like that's one of the inherent benefits of this.
Sure.
If we set it up that way and used a provider for the back end that supported that.
Right.
But that then brings it to a local control on a national, international topic.
It also removes us from the regulation. I mean, at the moment, the FCC is going all ho for corporations, and and it removes us from that.
I just think it's important as we do this that when we bring up these points, we say like, these are things about this model that we have found attractive, rather than this is why we should do this.
This isn't our final report to the public. This is our first introduction to them. And we don't want it to come off like,
This is to get
This is what we're
direction from you.
And we're largely getting direction. We're saying, hey, we've done this research. This is a plan that we're thinking of recommending to the mayor. We want to know what you, the residents, think about this idea. But really, we're not here to tell them what to think. We're here to get their opinions. So while we can sort of talk about models that we've seen that are interesting, I do think it's important to be careful not to, before a public hearing where we're saying we're supposed to be here to get people's opinions, like if we lead into that with, here's why this is good and better than then there's,
you should think.
that's the kind of thing that could lead current players in the industry to potentially say that there's sort of foul play going on, and even if there's nothing illegal about it, just,
I like what you're saying. Present it as findings about the system that's being looked into, as opposed to these are our opinions. It's more like these are facts about the research that we've done.
Could we get, sorry, this is slightly off topic, but the MLP issue, I know that was voted on in the previous fiscal year and we're now in the new fiscal year.
We've got a public hearing in August, so it'll be by the time that we have this. By the time that it'll be August 4th, I guess. So,
Do you know that, is there deadline for getting things on the ballot?
Yeah, we'll need to get it by the end of September, if we want to get it on the ballot.
Is that a
So-
special act thing or no?
No, it's through through general law if you want to.
So it doesn't have to go to the state?
No, it's completely fine. Basically, on that, like, that is sailing towards completion, and I see no real barriers. I think that, I mean, it passed unanimously the last time, and it passed, it got out of subcommittee unanimously
Cool.
a week ago, so.
But educating the voters about
Yes.
what it means, are we able to do that, some of that education?
That's probably a conversation for another time,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
it's complicated and not on the agenda, but I think the answer is sort of.
Easthampton media again.
Yeah, we, like, yes, but we have to be a little bit careful.
We do a fireside chat.
But we should probably start getting an item like that on the agenda
Yeah,
for this.
Yeah.
You know,
I
that's
mean-
gonna come up quick.
right, especially once it's past that second MLP vote, then it's basically guaranteed to happen, so, yeah. For real,
Educating
we-
people that it's
It's non-binding.
it's non-binding and it doesn't to do this, to form
Yeah.
this is not cost any, like it's not
Right.
slam dunk, it's
So
something
to
they're gonna
check
be
the
in for
box.
10 to 12 million.
So this is, yeah, and I mean, I think
They're
that there's
separate.
something, so 2 points. One is that, yeah, or the big thing is, I don't actually know if that is something that this particular body is appropriate to carry out that particular goal. I think that it's very likely that citizens who are interested in this might form a formal ballot committee
Yeah,
at
right.
that point with a chair and a treasurer that would have that goal. And I think that at that point, there probably isn't anything barring members of this committee from volunteering in that capacity, to the extent that they feel is appropriate. But we as a research body don't have a mandate to advocate for any political.
Right, we started that ball rolling.
Yeah, and
Not necessarily, I didn't see it as advocacy,
Yeah.
I just saw it as
Education.
education about,
What does it
this is what an MLP is, and this is what
Yeah.
it means and does not mean for.
You know what actually might be a good people to talk to there is the folks on the school building committee.
Yeah.
Because they found themselves putting something before on the ballot, and then many of those people knocked doors. But that's a question I've actually been talking a lot with Barb about, is like, how do you juggle those hats? How do you manage, like, if you want to advocate for something that your committee recommended, how do you do that without running afoul of any state ethics issues? And basically what I found is there's no major issues, but you still just want to be really, really careful how you do that. But again, that would be the job for Citizens for Better Internet or
Yeah.
something, not this particular body.
Okay.
Alright. So I did write some of this under the presumption that this was approved by the city council.
Yeah.
This is, very
I'd be shocked if it wasn't, so.
language, but yeah. Okay. So, any rollout of a citywide fiber optic installation would take several years to accomplish and will require an investment of time, money, and energy. Early cost estimates for a full fiber-to-home installation across the city are as much as $10 to $12 billion. That is the highest estimation we have come up with, but we do need a full evaluation of current infrastructure, including an inspection of each utility pole, to properly quote a project of this scale. Further, a gradual build-out plan will allow the reinvestment of revenue generated to fund network expansion, so a substantial portion of the cost may be covered by the service itself. It is possible the city would fund this initiative using a tax exemption, but it is also possible to fund this using revenue bonds or debts repaid with profits earned, as other cities have done when funding similar internet utilities. We believe strongly in the economic feasibility of this proposal and expect it will be a long-term generator of revenue for the city.
It's pretty good, I like that.
Yeah, I like the substantial portion of the cost may be covered by the service itself. But I think you could say, instead of saying this could happen, this could be, you could introduce it as this city did this city did that, this city,
Yeah.
as a way of introducing the ideas without giving any recommendation. Like, here's how Portland did it, here's how South Hadley's doing it, or, you know.
I think the last sentence is a no-go. Just because that's what this committee is designed to find out, is to study the economic feasibility. So unless this is a report of findings, I think we could say something like, this has been economically feasible in Westfield or Greenfield or whatever, but
We
to
can
say-
say, based on the experiences of other communities, we believe that this may be.
yeah,
I mean,
or we expect this to be, you know, it's like,
Yeah, you could say like Westfield, what's his name, not Rich, but John, was saying, like, our business model quoted this take rate, we actually are experiencing this take rate, and
We have
how
similar
that
information from Greenfield.
yeah, and we can share that as a way of saying this is the economic feasibility.
I
of a
think if
project like
we,
this.
just presented our experience with Westfield and with Greenfield, that'd be more than enough.
Yeah, and talk about how
People
Westfield-
with Data.
Right, how Westfield started with the fiber hoods and like,
Mhm.
you know, self-funded the expansion, like you're saying.
Right.
That would be.
So I figured we'd talk about the different models that we have, you know, and I'm not sure how much we want to emphasize, we talked to Westfield or we talked to Greenfield and stuff, or how much we just want to talk about how the model worked in that city. You know, because I know that if we do move forward at some point and go out to bid, we don't want to make it seem like we have any sort of like preconceived attachment to any particular.
I'd be nervous to say anything other than very cursory about any of the communities that we've talked to, just for fear of making it look like we are trying to tip
We've made a
public
decision
opinion
already.
in one way or another. I think we could say something like, some of the people that we've talked to include Westfield, who rolled this out from their MLP and does fiber to home, and Greenfield, who actually set up an MLP like we would have to and is doing this weird wireless thing. We've also talked to private people like Matrix One, who would potentially be interested in doing a public-private partnership.
Right.
And then you move on, but it's not like a
deep
this is
dive.
like,
You don't rank them, these are just.
no, it's like, maybe it's a slide, and here are some people we've talked to, and maybe one sub-bullet for each person about just like a fun fact about their business that people might find like interesting, but not anything, we don't want to be like, we don't, like, sorry, I'm being like the super cautious person here. all of a
No,
sudden.
this is that's a good voice.
No, I'm with you. I feel like the more sort of scientific, like a report,
neutral
like
they
a
are.
like a lab report almost, as opposed to like a.
Would it be worth talking to or talking about any of the communities around here who are just starting on the project, like South Hadley, and finding out? People are gonna wanna know, okay, Westfield, it's great. Greenfield, it's going great, but like, where is South Hadley right now in there? I mean, they're probably still in the design phase if they're, but.
I could create a slide that's just a map of communities that have adopted with maybe just a color scale to indicate like timeline.
Yeah.
Just like communities that have had it for a while, communities that have just recently had it, communities that are in the process of getting it.
Like, here's where South Hadley
Yeah.
is in their process, and here's some relevant quote about what they've experienced so far.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. So, yeah, I would just, my advice would be to err towards brevity when discussing those communities.
I'd also use communities that are comparable to Easthampton and not talk about hill towns, because it's a completely different
Yeah, I
model.
agree with that.
I mean, frankly, the only
That'll
community
probably come
that's
up, though.
like
Somebody
Easthampton.
will probably ask a question
Yeah,
about that.
and that's
or, like,
fine,
bring
we
that
can
concern.
respond to the question.
We can't respond during the meeting.
Oh, that's why I keep forgetting those.
And frankly, the only community that is like Easthampton is Greenfield. Because every other community around here that's done this has had an MLP. They're the only one that's gone on the journey that we're considering going on, where you go from no MLP to MLP.
He's a big focus on this.
With no, what am I saying? With no like grant money or anything like that. They just like at a small city just like created an MLP to put up internet.
And it seems as though, I think there's over 40 MLPs in the state, I think 41, I don't know how recent that number was, but most of them are really just focused on power generation, or focused on almost like DPW roles, like changing out light bulbs and changing over to LEDs. I saw one city did that in Massachusetts. Their MLP decided that they were just going to go and change out all the light bulbs on the street lights to LEDs. And
Right.
they were so.
Yeah, most of them have been around since, like a couple of years ago, there were no new MLPs. Most of them have been around for close to 100 years. And they were all power focused.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of a new.
Not that this is the time to have this conversation, and for what it's worth, actually, like have a little bit of a time constraint. I'll stay as long as we need to, but there's somewhere that I at some point need to be tonight. But
Mysterious.
But that said, I think if you get that book, Fiber, that we were talking about a little while back, they have an extensive history about electric light companies and how that, those companies were formed, and then how many of them were dissolved, and sort of the history of like how that all went down. I would, for anyone on this committee, highly recommend that book. But anyway, let's get back to this.
Okay. So regardless of which partner we choose to help us build a fiber optic network, Easthampton would need to become a municipal light plant community in order to put fiber up on the poles. A municipal light plant is a locally owned utility operated and managed as a commercial enterprise, separate and independent from general city governmental departments. We made a recommendation to the City Council this past February that they vote for Easthampton to become a municipal light plant. The council must vote to become an MLP in 2 separate votes, occurring in 2 separate fiscal years, both with a 2/3 majority. The council has voted approval of moving forward, and the matter is set to be ratified by the voters on the ballot this November. Becoming a municipal light plant does not cost the city anything, but it is a necessary step if we are going to develop a municipal fiber network at any point in the future.
I would even say to develop, and wouldn't it be true even if we went with Greenfield's model? Like it doesn't matter if we're offering fiber or offering some other wireless or some other offering, we would need to be an MLP, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this first sentence, there's that. The other thing is, although I think we have all internally, or at least I don't want to speak for everyone. I think I personally have looked at this and said, wow, partnering with another municipality or a private company seems like the way to go. There's the option of us just doing it like Greenfield did is not off the table, right? So when we say regardless of who we partner with,
Right,
we might want to say like regardless of whether or not we partner with an existing person, if we choose to do this, we will need to become an MLP.
Do you become an MLP or do you form an MLP? Okay.
Yeah, you establish.
Yes.
And any variety of service is going to involve some fiber optic network.
Right. Yeah.
So the language there, I think, is
Yeah.
okay
I think
enough.
like broadband is enough to.
Yeah, you could change it to broadband, municipal broadband, all those
Because
broadband.
fiber just sort of, in my mind,
It does box it very well.
like boxes it in. It
Yeah.
also biases it towards like we're making a recommendation. We
That's
want to
true.
be a fiber,
Yep.
which I do based on everything I've heard so far. But
No, I think part of it, and I think it's important, and Tom kind of touched on this earlier, is that when you have been having these conversations for a year, and we've delved into so many different things, you have to keep in mind that the people that we're speaking to have not been part of these conversations, and this is the first time, and that's a good perspective. I probably should.
And how we actually reach the home is less critical in this, whether it is wireless or fiber to the home or coax to the home. We need the MLT to put the fiber on the poles. How we get from the pole to the home doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Or put coax on the poles, whatever we do.
To touch the poles, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, close that one or move?
I'm fine with that.
Thank you all again for coming to see us tonight. We are counting on this community being involved. We need you to give us as much feedback as possible. Make your voices heard. Tell us what you like and don't like about the service you have today, and more importantly, tell us what you want to see in the service you have tomorrow. This is your chance to make a difference, stand up, and help solve a problem which impacts us all. We are now going to turn the floor over to you. Please keep in mind, we are unable to respond directly to questions or comments in this format. We are here purely to take feedback and listen to what you have to say. Please be respectful and try to limit your time to 5 minutes or less so everyone can have a chance to talk.
I would strike the tell us what you like and don't like about the service you have today, just because I wouldn't want to get into it. I just wouldn't, and they're going to talk about that, but, yeah, no need to.
A flame for 'em,
I mean,
you know.
we should just set up a charity boxing match between
Good talk
one of
about
us and
that.
a charter representative or something.
You're the one lifting all those weights.
Yeah.
We could bring a dunk tank and put it
So I'm fine with, I mean, we just gave a lot of feedback. Do you want to just send out like a draft, like
Yep.
at some point between now and
Okay.
August, and
Yeah.
then we can, like with all of that feedback, and then we can chat about this again
Yeah, absolutely.
with a new draft.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Great, this is great. Thank you guys so much for.
Just one other suggestion,
Yes.
and I may have missed this if it was discussed. I'm not sure we need to be as specific as saying 10 to 12 million dollars. And just
Yeah.
say, it may cost several $1 million to do without being specific about a number.
Yeah.
See,
just-
I'm on the other end on that, where I feel like if we, I mean, I think there's actually reason to believe it would be lower, just based on some
I agree.
stuff I've been hearing. But like, I think that if we come out and say, the people that we've talked to so far, because that's the number one question that everyone's going to ask every single time is, well, what's this gonna cost? If we say, look, the people that we've talked to, for them, they've experienced, like, they would expect this to be 10 to 12 million. Now, there might be things about our community that make this easier, but like the cost of a full build out, I mean, maybe
The
I'm.
problem is that as soon as we say 10 to 12 million, that is the number we're gonna be, anybody's gonna
That's
be
gonna be
judged
our
on.
goal.
I don't want to
If we're 15 million, we went over budget by 3 to 5 million.
that-
Not we, but
Yeah.
it just sets an expectation.
I came up with
Let's
that
get the
number
five.
based on estimates that I had, and when I ran that by John from Westfield, he said it wouldn't be that. They were
Yeah.
thinking more 7 to 8 million.
I feel like it's also going to turn the discussion into all the possibilities of, it's just going to make it about funding as
Yeah.
opposed to
Right.
about
Mhm.
internet service. And
Right, and
I
then
think
people are
in
gonna
that
want to
deal,
talk about what's
Storm
this gonna
there
mean
is
for
just
taxes.
You know, we could even say 5 to 10 million, although I think that's just gonna send us down the same rat hole.
So people are gonna hear 5 to 10 million,
And they're gonna
think,
lock in on
if we don't
5,
get it
you
at
know.
5,
Right.
if it costs a dime over 10, it's-
don't put in estimates at all. I think it's
Right.
great
Yeah.
to say,
several million.
here's
right.
the different funding models that we've researched.
Right.
A gradual build-out plan, we could, like, tax exemption, revenue bonds, debts repaid with profits earned. It's like, these are all the options
And we
there.
can really just say, in the line about the, having to do the evaluation, getting the inspection utility poles, I mean, that's the reality of it, was we really can't get a solid quote until we do have that work done.
Yeah.
I'm actually
I
more in
can go
favor
there.
of the discussion of it as a public utility, as a basic utility that is as important as water coming into the house, electricity
Sewer.
coming into the house, sewer, like,
Yeah.
we need this. This is not something we can depend on
Yeah.
Verizon for a future,
Yeah.
or.
And we can do it cheaper by making it
Charter or
not a
anybody.
profit enterprise.
I appreciate that. I guess my one thing, and if you guys all disagree with me on this, that's fine. But when I run into these things and they say, well, you've been around for a year and you don't even have an estimate of what it's going to cost, it's going to seem like hand waving. I think if we come up with, I think that 10 to 12 million is conservative, but like,
Then we go
I-
12 to 15. You say 12 to 15, like, if we come in lower, suddenly, and we say 12 to
We're
15,
heroes.
and we say, actually, it's gonna be 7 to 8, and that's the hard estimate based on the poll survey we did and all the, like, then it's like, oh, this is suddenly half of what it cost.
because when people come out and they say, well, what's it going to cost? If you say about $10 million, they go, oh, that's a lot, but compared, we've got a $100 million school. This is well within our, like, we do things like this. If you say, what's it going to cost? And you go, well, it's tough. It depends on a lot of factors. Like, oh, why don't you just?
Right.
That's just my only
What have
thing.
you guys been doing for the last year?
Why can't we come up with some kind of the price will be based on the subscriptions that we receive, or something like that. So if you get 700 or 1,000 people in Easthampton to get the service, well, how's that gonna affect that cost?
Well,
Something
it
like-
won't affect the cost to
To do
do the make-ready work and put the fiber up on the poles.
That's 10, that's gonna scare the living daylights out of people. You're already talking that big school thing coming up next year.
Yeah, but compared to that, this is a drop. 10 million is a drop.
I've heard, so people who I've spoken with, if I've given them any idea of what the number might be, they say, well, that sounds like a lot of money, but it also doesn't sound like that much money for what we're.
Yeah, that's been the response I've gotten, so, because I have.
I haven't had it turn. I mean, I haven't had that turn anyone
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
yet. And I've been straight. I've plenty of constituents to bring this up. What's it going to cost?
We're also talking about it in the context of a budget that was really tight and people had to watch the schools.
Yeah, that's true.
Cut positions. I mean, you're seeing, people are saying, we're supposed to be this booming city. Why are we laying people, why are our public schools, why are we laying them off? It doesn't make any sense. And I know it's like revenue's gonna catch up eventually to some, maybe not. The pot money is not as much as we thought it was gonna be. It's certainly not comparable to what Northampton's bringing in. Like, I think just staying away from the 10 to 12 million, unless we go with a high estimate and then come later with a real estimate that's under that. That's really, I think the other way around would be disastrous.
And remember also that by the time we get rolling on this, there'll be 3 or 4 more pod institutions around the city.
I think that number.
Let's not go down speculating on cannabis.
Well, what I'm just saying is there's a lot of stuff
Yeah.
going on with municipal budgets and money
Yeah.
and tax
Yeah.
revenue, and people are,
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I just feel that like, if it kind of like, I think it's better to give them a number, and they might not like that number, but that makes more sense than knowing a number and not bring. I mean, they can just go and
Why
watch
not
this meeting.
suggest saying 10 to 15, because that's a broader range, which gives them a better idea that it's kind of, it's vague. And then also say it's partly gonna depend on the poll survey. Because people understand, we are not out there
Right.
climbing
But
poles.
what if something happens and suddenly the cost of fiber optic cable goes through the roof and then it blows up
Yeah,
budget? Like,
well, that's
it's
true.
like,
I mean, so that's why we're saying it's.
we're gonna be held accountable for any number we give, regardless of anything that happens.
If you
That
can
changes
say,
that.
yes, but the fiber went through the roof, I think people can cope. I mean, that's enough of a big explanation.
I think at the end of the day, if it's not gonna directly raise people's taxes, and if this will be repaid with revenues from the service, then the sticker doesn't
Yeah.
really factor in.
Yep. I just think you're right, if it's a revenue funded, if you're starting, and if you're also saying, we're gonna take a small amount of money to fund a pilot project, get some revenue, bring that revenue in, and then show that actually this is feasible and
Yeah.
expand.
So right, so I think that's the really important. If we're going to talk number, maybe that's the really important thing is to say if we want to do the whole city overnight, our guess is it would cost something like this, although it could be lower depending on how exactly we do it. Now, that's not necessarily how we do it though. There's a possibility that we could start it out in a few neighborhoods and build out from there.
It's a good sales tactic. You put out you put it out as options.
Yes.
Like, if we could do this all at once, it would be 10 to 12 million. We're also looking at doing it at, one neighborhood at a time. It really gives us a better way to estimate the costs overall. Like,
Right.
It's just a nice
And
way.
Westfield has
And
been a
fun-
strong advocate for start with the pilot project
Yeah,
and build out over
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
Do not bond for all this money all at once and spend it all.
This is good feedback. I think I can work something that can be worked. So good. All right.
Thanks for doing all that, right?
Yeah, thank you.
One
Oh,
point
we have
that
a
was
couple-
brought up is, and it probably wouldn't be to track the cost of fiber, you know, and see if it's been steady or if it's been going up. So I'm gonna do some research on that before the next meeting. You all,
Now, I wonondered if it
two
would
people can do
be.
it too, if you want to look into it. No, I'm
You'd
kidding.
probably get wined and dined a little bit if you posed as a buyer. Thinking about making a large
We
purchase.
can't even pay for your survey
What are we gonna do with all
costs.
this wasted toner?
All right. So, in expediency, let's move on.
Okay.
Past this. I know I've been asked. Someone asked to put 5G internet on for today. The agenda.
Yeah, that was me, I think.
Okay.
I'll speak to it very quickly. I was interested in this, and I did do some research. 5G, and this is kind of what I was thinking, but I just confirmed it because I didn't really know. 5G uses mostly something called small cells, which is unlike current cell towers. They are microcells that go on utility poles. So it makes the rollout of this sort of more relevant and also a little bit more complicated and maybe something that is comfortable to be tabled for the time being. However, what I learned is 5G rollout is going to depend on fiber networks for backhaul. And it's going to depend on a lot of cells going up on telephone poles. There's some weird stuff going on with the FCC regarding that very recently over the last couple months that I didn't get into deep, but it would certainly affect a town like Easthampton and the fees and negotiated stuff that comes in with the providers of these cells. I can't imagine it would be a bad position to be a MLP that owns a fiber network in a situation like that. However, this FCC stuff comes into the ability to negotiate with those providers. So
Oh, they're gonna like set the table.
it's kind of intense. Like,
cheap.
yeah, they're like, anyway, it's in the courts. Federal policy. It's being challenged by quite a lot of states and municipalities. But anyway, I think it's interesting to take into account the fact that a municipal fiber network would be the backhaul for future 5G rollout.
Unless they use the existing dark fiber somehow. That's
Or
already
put up their own.
Or put up their own.
Around-
Yep. No, but yeah, it might not be ours, but it's gonna be there. I mean, it's part of what that is.
If we started doing that, that could also cause them to drag their feet on doing, like, if we needed any pole work done, they could then suddenly, it could take a year, 2 years for them to get around to moving anything that we need them to
Well,
move.
So one thing that's
Yeah.
interesting there, actually I can't talk about this because it's not on the agenda, but I had a chat with former Mayor Tosnick the other day, and he clarified the intent of the language specifying stuff on a pole, and it's something I'd like to talk about at the next meeting because it's awfully interesting. Sorry to just
Yes,
tease you.
That's a big tease, Tom.
You can just find the language yourself. It's public information. I don't want to get into a deliberation, but there's some stuff there, and it could have some pretty big implications.
You
So
won't believe what happened next.
tune in next week. I cut you off.
Stan, did you
No,
have a
I
comment?
was just gonna say, the other problem we have is many of our poles have too much stuff on them now, and finding room is gonna be even more difficult
when they put a
once
new
the
pole.
5G transmitters go in.
Right.
Well, if we're ahead of the game, then it costs them
Right.
to move
If-
us.
to-
No,
to-
they
to
would have to
accommodate-
move us, but they would have to pay for the pole to get a new
Extended.
taller pole.
Yeah.
Rather than
We pay for it.
us.
Yeah.
having to pay. If they put
Yeah.
in their 5G stuff ahead of us, and then suddenly we don't have enough room and they can't.
I mean,
we
it could
incur
end
that
up
cost.
being a revenue thing for the city too, if we have a if we have a fiber network,
Is that something that some people are doing where they're actually saying like, okay, your 5G is going through the municipal fiber network?
5G is too early for
Yeah.
that kind of
And
stuff
when
to
is
be out there.
it likely, does
The
anybody
next
know, like,
10
likely
years.
when they're gonna, because they, with FiOS, they stopped at Metro West Boston, and they never, like, then the economic model collapsed, that they didn't go any further. So how soon are they gonna actually make it to a community?
Well, it's
like
going to be
this?
somewhere in between that, because this involves having fiber, but it doesn't need to be fiber to every home. It just needs to be fiber to every microcell.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
it's going to be like that in that it's going to hit rural that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But further than trying to put fiber to every.
And everything Stan told us, he was saying that they're employing a lot more crews to get ready for this rollout. Like, they're gearing up to do this in a big way. I just wonder, that was what FiOS was supposed to be.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's a lot of hype about 5G.
Yeah.
I mean, there is something there, but there's a lot of hype about it.
So
So,
And there's a lot of opposition to it based, on health issues.
yes. So what I learned about 5G is it's actually 13 different technologies and proposals, and what current providers are talking about as 5G service is really just the first one or two of those. So it's a very long, complicated rollout with a lot of different technologies that's going to happen over the next 10 to 15 years. So it's not just one thing, but I think it's safe to table for the time being, but it's good information to have that it could put the city in a good negotiating position if the city's even allowed to negotiate under the law. And the other thing is, personally, within the last month, I actually switched to Spectrum cell phone for my own personal use, which is a weird thing, but it's very, very inexpensive. I think it would be interesting to study more, and I'm happy to do this on my own and kind of report back, but like what municipal mobile phone service would look like. I think it sort of falls under the category of this committee, but
Would you be able to use, well, maybe this is a conversation for another day.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But would you be able to use it outside of the city? Like, how would that
Yes,
work?
yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, currently there's many, many regional cell phone providers, and when you roam, they all have agreements in place that you're using other people's towers.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the kind of thing that would happen. I looked for some models of this, and I'm going to keep looking because there's not a lot out
there's
there.
a tiny company in Cambridge doing
Oh,
it.
yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
There was a recent article in the Globe about it.
Cool.
So, yeah.
So that would be, I think, interesting to look into, especially if we already have a fiber network, and it's like, oh, then if we provide our own network, can we then expand it so that people can use it outside of the city too? And what would that even look like? Would we even be allowed to? So it's a lot of stuff, but I'm interested. Like I'm saying, I kind of want to table it and do more
Yeah.
research on it.
Yeah,
But
that is an interesting concept. It's something that we touched on with the discussion of possibly having, if I were to pull wireless at home,
Right.
having these wireless transmitters, and then we have hotspots. Could be,
Right.
different things.
it's
So it's
a little different, but it's
there's
some overlap.
crossover over there. All right, 5G. That's interesting. So last item on our agenda, we need to do the selection of our officers. Did we have a 10-member committee?
We had 9.
It was
so-
9. It was always 9. Okay.
You know, in retrospect, that's a lot of people for a committee. But yeah. The only thing I want to point out is that Tom's not a voting member yet. I don't know if that matters, but
I guess it would only matter if it was a split vote. at this
or if
point.
you wanted to take a.
Not as of yet.
Okay,
That's a
then-
big first step.
All right. Yeah. Cool. Cool.
So there are 3 elected officers in the committee. There's the chairperson, the vice chair, and clerk.
Mhm.
Yes. I would like to be the chair. I've been the acting chair for several months, and if there is somebody else who would like to be chair, and the committee would go that way, that is the process.
I would second Paul being at least a candidate.
ringing endorsement.
Is anybody else interested? Or are we happy with the way we're rolling now? I think for continuity's sake, and this goes to the public meeting, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
I think that makes some sense, and I think you've done a good job, so I'm perfectly happy with that.
Me too.
So,
All right,
Three.
a vote?
I'll make a motion to nominate Paul St. Pierre to be the
Seconded.
chair.
All in favor?
Aye.
There you go. All right.
We're gonna need a vice chair.
Yeah,
I'd like to be considered the vice chair.
I think that's a good idea.
What does vice chair do?
Nominated, whatever.
Vice chair is the chair, if the chair.
Ceremonial role.
Paul was originally our vice chair.
It brings a cold
So
beer.
somebody working in Greenfield, and he's ended up the temporary chair.
So you guys aren't allowed to go in the same airplane?
Yeah.
One of us has to be.
There's the state of the city, one of you has to stay in a bunker.
Secretary of Agriculture.
Yeah.
you know, becomes the.
I'll nominate Jason for vice chair.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Standing.
And
You do such a great
I'm
job.
fine with being the clerk if people are happy.
You guys doing a
with
great
it.
job.
I don't think anyone's gonna.
I mean, really, it's.
Talk about a
easy enough to do
thankless
it.
job.
Yeah.
No, and I'd get the minutes to you relatively on time. I think I missed 1 week because there was some misunderstanding, so. Yep.
You're doing a great job.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to nominate.
Throw me under the bus.
Get him nominated.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. That was easy.
Wow, well, that all worked out nicely. In that case, I guess I'll make a motion.
Well, all right, so is it all right if we do the meeting in August, the second Monday? It would be the 12th. Would that-
So the 12th, and then the 14th is the public hearing. I'm fine with it, I don't see a problem.
Yeah.
Damn. No, I was gonna say you're doing a little.
You get to ask me
Just send an email along, let us know what's going on.
What's his face here? He's researching job, too.
And just one last thing, guys, just as a, if you could get, like, if you're gonna be doing, like, bringing a lot of information, just because, like, we've had a lot of information to digest, I don't think this is a rule or anything, but just personally, if you could get that out to the committee at least a couple days before, so that we have a chance to digest things prior to the meeting, it will allow me personally to be in have much better feedback. Because I can just sort of chew on things for a little bit.
I just bring a lot of your time. I apologize.
No, it's completely fine, I just, best practices.
I got a question. Are the people in Hoyle, are they aware they're trying to get a internet service going in Hoyle? Do the people in Hoyle actually know that?
My mother was talking about it because she just bought a condo in Holyoke. And I guess there's some movement, they're gonna have a public meeting about it.
Well,
I was
no,
talking to a guy
they're
over
putting
there.
it on the ballot.
They're trying to put it on the
that's-
ballot,
that-
yeah.
I was talking to a guy at Bergenite over in where I play golf, and the guy said he had no idea what was even going on.
Yeah, the whole thing's kind of crazy. I could catch you
Are
up
they
on that
forcing their
another
hand?
time.
Because I remember Holyoke.
I don't know.
Guys saying like,
They
we
weren't
don't.
interested,
Yeah.
but there were people in town who didn't agree with them, and they're
Yeah.
basically saying.
No, they've been real
petition.
unhappy with that,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's been a back and forth, and the council got involved, and there had to be some prominent recusals on the council because there were like someone. It was an entire thing, and I
Typical.
and then one of the guys who was most involved in pushing it through was a friend of mine who just moved to Cincinnati, so like I don't know what that does to this movement, but I have no idea. It's very strange because like citizen initiatives are great, but they rarely have the power to force the government to spend money. So I don't actually know what sort of teeth it has, but we'll figure it out. I'm keeping an eye on it.
Interesting.
It's like the transit authority down in Boston or something else.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah.
Okay. So,
Thank you.
is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Second, anyone? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
So-